My name is Greg from New York.
Hi, Greg from New York. What's up?
Hey. No, I always call in wanting to defend libertarians, say something interesting, and then you guys wind up saying something even more interesting, and then I want to talk about that.
That's how we roll. Let's
Uh,
talk. What's up?
Sorry. All right. Well, I just wanted to chime in about the Bill Nye scientific thing, kind of say, listen, I agree obviously with the science, and I agree with you and Bill completely. Having said that, I think there's one thing you guys haven't talked about, which is that, whoever was on that show were right about the effect on American the behavior of Americans. I mean, think of another area in which scientists have failed to convince a lot of Americans, and that's evolution. I mean, look, polls have been done. 30% of Americans don't believe in evolution accounts for how species
Yeah, but
arose,
you know what though?
despite consensus.
You're falling though for what this. It's a conservative strategy here that's going on, really, and you're sort of falling into it. They've been fighting and brainwashing and spending millions and millions of dollars on propaganda to change the minds of people, to convince them that these scientists are wrong. They're liberal scientists. They have an agenda. Evolution's not real. Climate change is not real. And then after they convince these people through these brainwashing tactics and this propaganda that they're spreading, then they approach the scientists and they say, you guys have been failing. It's unfair to these scientists whose job it is to actually do science. It's unfair to blame them for the message that these anti-science people are spreading, and then for these anti-science people to turn around to the scientists and say, "You guys failed." It's just unfair. It's just not. It's not the scientists' fault.
No, I completely agree. And but just saying it's unfair is not going to solve the problem.
Well, I mean,
You should have
Greg,
radio
that's what I
shows
was.
that It's unfair.
No,
That's what I mean.
I agree. There's definitely a problem if this large percentages of Americans don't believe in evolution, don't believe in climate change. But that's not a problem for scientists. We want them to do the job of science. There needs to be people like you, like us here, like anyone who believes in scientific fact. They need to be the ones.
Well, you're preaching to the choir, but I'm saying, okay, let me put it in a perspective that removes the partisan, the liberal sort of left versus right. In Europe, for example, there's a curious phenomenon. Actually, it's the liberals that doubt the science more. And the reason is GMO foods. They're banned in Europe.
Greg.
I don't want to get
Greg,
too much into this.
Greg,
this
we're
GMO
not.
thing.
I just have to say really quick. I just have to. We've talked about
Sure.
GMOs probably too much on this program, and I just have to say though, even if I was to accept your premise that having concerns about GMOs was the equivalent to rejecting climate science, which I absolutely do not. There's no
I'm
that
not
it's
saying
but
that, by the
no
way.
no okay, but I'm saying it's a false claim to say, because I guarantee you, even if you think those people are being unscientific about GMOs, those same people certainly accept climate science. So there isn't any equivalent in the United States and Europe around climate,
the
because frankly in Europe, for that matter, most conservative parties actually accept the science of climate. I mean, they're in, although there's
of
an
course,
assault
Michael, I
underway in the
completely
UK
agree.
as well.
You,
Yeah.
you can't take the politics out of it in this country, especially because listen, children. They're we're sending our children to voucher schools that teach creationism. That's what this country is dismantling. Public schools and public education, all for conservative ideology, all for the religious right. It's politics are the reason that this is going on, and scientists.
Yeah, I'm with you. 100%.
Scientists don't have the time,
You can't.
the
Well, so-
knowledge, or the money to be able to fight back. This is not their specialty. There needs to be people who can put money towards education. They can put money toward. We need to change this sort of outlook, and I think it starts with schools.
So what are you trying? I mean, I guess I take your point somewhat about preaching to the choir, but I get, so what's your if you had to give a thumbnail of what you're trying to get at, what would it be?
Right. I'm trying to say that there's one side that I think should be paid more attention to, and that's the PR side, the propaganda side. I'm saying that
Yeah.
scientists are great at doing the science, but I think what she was pointing out on that show is don't just lash out at it and say, look, she's just being irrational. She's actually pointing to the very things that you.
Well, did you hear my segment, Greg? Because I was that's exactly what I was saying. I mean, not to jump in, but I had to call her out because I think that she's playing a role too by making, look, it's a PR thing to make the conversation about the secondary conversation. So that needs to be called out. That's part of my job. But I did say, look,
That's correct.
There's no question that just repeating the facts is not doing the job. Now, the environmental community gets that, and there's a tremendous amount of money and energy and effort, and even things like this program, because frankly, part of a show that has an outright perspective is you do develop frames, you do develop arguments, but I think personally, before we jump, I just think part of the foundational problem of this is that, one, there's a massive PR campaign for the status quo, which is continuing on the path we're on, which is always easier than taking decisive action. That's number one, and favors incumbent interests.
Mm-hmm.
And then number two, people look at this, and even if they accept it, which of course they will and they should, and it's a must, it's a profoundly overwhelming and complex issue in some respects, and that is its own.
I mean,
distinction.
even 1 second, even with what you're saying, where we have to listen to what she says. She's trying to put together a point, but even in that CNN segment,
she's saying that scientists are bullying.
Yeah, but even in that CNN segment,
they are bullying when it comes to evolution, for sure. It is true. It doesn't negate the validity of
Well, let's have that call in for that conversation.
Well, let's wrap this up. But I just want to say to close this conversation here, I just want to say, even in that CNN segment, look who they had on to discuss climate change. They had on Bill Nye, the science guy, who's there with no political agenda, just to tell the science facts, as 98% of scientists, I believe, more than that, I believe, say and believe, after study, and then to refute him, they have on a guy from the Heritage Foundation. It's.
You're right. You're right.
So definitely call in next time. We'll talk about the other points you were trying to get to.
No, I appreciate the point.
I just wanted to say. Sure. Just 5 seconds. I just want to say, I think the way we have to solve this problem is remove carbon from the atmosphere. If we stop doing what we're doing, that's not going to solve the problem.
Yeah,
there's ways to capture the carbon and not put it in the ocean.
Cool.
That's it.
All right, thanks for the call.